Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jeff.
And I'm Chris.
And we are your prepared neighbors and hoping to become your go-to resource for personal and community preparedness. Now, before we dive too deep, I think it might make sense to do a little intro of who I am, and then we'll pass the baton over to Chris. So I'm Jeff. I'm a former Army guy. I finished that up many years ago. It was like I finished in the Army, and then about like a week or two later, they made dirt. That's about how long ago this has been. I did 8 years in the intelligence community after that. So I spent the time in various three-letter agencies in the Washington, D.C. area. And then in my community, I was a volunteer firefighter and a paramedic. I also taught paramedics and medics for about 5 years during that time. I was an instructor for CPR, advanced cardiac life support, pediatric advanced life support, international trauma life support. And also simultaneous to a lot of that, I spent about 15 years in federal sales, selling IT to a variety of DoD, intelligence, and special operations groups all over the U.S. I am a general class ham radio operator and am currently a full-time educator teaching beekeeping, which I'm sure we'll discuss at some point in time. And of course, I do like horseback riding and long walks on the beach. So let's go ahead and pass the baton over to Chris for an intro. And Chris, please, if you would, share everyone your vision for the podcast and what you're hoping we can accomplish.
I am a hearing instrument specialist. I'm also the owner of Healthy Hearing Now. I'm a former teacher. I used to teach English as a second language to kids from all different parts of the world who could not speak English. My background is pretty much all about educating, communicating, and helping people. And together, Jeff and I want to deliver a high-quality podcast that gives actionable information that you all can immediately put to good use. By the way, if you have any tips or information that you feel would be valuable to others, we'd love to hear it. What do you think, Jeff?
Awesome. Very, very cool. Well, so I think this will be the kind of the last introductory thing before we kind of jump into some topics and things we're going to talk about. But I think it also makes sense to tell people and everybody how Chris and I met. So years ago, we both have daughters. I've got 3 daughters, and one of my daughters was in school with one of Chris's daughters, and they became friends. And then there was a discussion that was taking place. I was having some issues on my with tinnitus or tinnitus, depending on how you pronounce it, in my ears, which is just a ringing of the ears. And my daughter said, I think Renee's dad is a hearing specialist. And that's how Chris and I synced up. And, right away we saw a lot of similarities in, thought and ideas and different things. And the more time we kind of spent, joking around and talking together about just things that were going on globally, nationally, locally, we thought, hey, maybe it makes sense to share a little bit of, just a little bit of these ideas and things we're having with other people.
We spent a lot of time just kind of shooting the breeze. And of course, as the name of the podcast suggests, we are neighbors. And so I would need help with something around the house. Jeff would have a question about something. And so we found ourselves getting together every so often just to get out of the house, shooting the breeze. And our conversations always seem to revolve around, hey, what do you think about this? I just heard this on the news. And what are you doing for water? What are you doing for, if cell towers go down? I mean, we've got families. We want to be prepared. We want to have things in place. And I heard something a long time ago that made an awful lot of sense to me. And that was be ready so you don't have to get ready.
No, that's awesome. And, when we talk about preparedness, I think a lot of people will have a different vision in their mind about what that means. So to kind of just very high level, we are going to be doing this at least once a week for probably, I would say, somewhere in the next 10 to 15 years. So we are going to talk about a whole lot of things. But at a high level, things that are really, really kind of low-hanging fruit and really obvious, right? Tornadoes, hurricanes, right? Chris and I live in the mid-Atlantic region of Virginia, so hurricanes are a real threat for us. Wildfires, earthquakes, civil unrest, short and long-term power outages, cybersecurity disruptions. And, cybersecurity disruption ties into like a disruption in fuel. I think it was about a year or two ago, we had that cybersecurity incident in the Southeast that shut down the flow of gasoline to our area. So something that was completely unexpected had a pretty major impact. anything dealing with utilities, water, gas, sewage, home invasion, right? Disruption of the food supply, all kinds of things are going to get covered here as we kind of go on this preparedness journey.
And I think also, just to give a little bit of perspective, this is really two dads with families just trying to stay prepared. And the conversations that we had always revolved around that. It's like, what do we need to do so that our family is going to be taken care of? That's it.
No, that's a huge point. And, this is, I think that we're in a position because we have, we're a couple of, middle-aged guys here. We got a lot of life experience. And, I think to my daughter, one of my daughters was recently married and, she's out in the world now, her and her husband, young couple, and they've got a lot of things they've got to figure out. I think back to being that age, there really wasn't anybody who was telling me outside of the military. The military is all about preparedness, fire and rescue, all about preparedness, right? Making sure your equipment is prepared, your personnel are prepared. All of those areas had a lot of preparedness elements and components to them. But as a young person by myself, there was nobody really teaching me like, hey, you need to be putting these things aside. You need to plan for these potential events. So the goal here is not just to target people who are middle-aged or retired age. It's for everybody because I think everybody has a role to play or at least has an opportunity to learn and something they can take away from the messaging. And there are going to be things that won't apply. But I think that probably at least 75, 80% of everything we say will have some level of applicability. And if nothing else, maybe some awareness, just being aware that these are things you should be considering.
One of the things that really strikes me is something that you just mentioned, Jeff, is that with your background in the military, you're in an environment where somebody's going to help you to develop those skill sets. As I look at my own family, as a father, it's kind of difficult because anybody that has kids immediately knows, yeah, Dad, okay, yep, I got it, I know. And I try to tell the kids, look, it's what you learn after you know it all. That's what's really important. And so how do you create a resource that they can tap into so that when something happens, they know where to look? It's like, oh, I got a flat tire. Oh, Dad sent me this thing. It's in my notes. He sent me this. And here's the instructions. Oh, he even put pictures. Oh, wow, he even did a video. So I just use my iPhone to show them, look, this is where you put the jack. Do your lug nuts. Make sure you're going, diagonally. Things like that. This is where the air pressure is. So Jeff and I wanted to create a valuable tool for everyday families, people that had some really, really useful information. That's it.
No, that's awesome. And I'm laughing right now because, his daughter, I was over at his house the other day and I can't remember what we were doing. We were talking about something and I looked down at his daughter's truck and I said, hey, your tire's going flat. And for whatever reason, I think they didn't have a compressor, readily available. So I, took her over to my house and put some air in the tire. And I was talking to Chris about it later, and he was like, yeah, I did these videos. And again, think about this idea. This is just one quick kind of pro tip for you here as a father, a parent, whoever you are, doesn't matter. Thinking about somebody you love, take a few minutes and just do a quick video of how to do something. He sent her videos like, hey, this is how you change your tire. How cool is that? If you're like, crap, I have a flat tire. You pull up a video and there's your dad showing you how to change a flat tire. I thought that was kind of a cool, neat idea. But think about it for anything that you do. If you're going to make a trip with, let's say that you're just going to go see a friend that's maybe 100 or 200 miles away. Maybe you chop the top off the fluids in your vehicle. Maybe you go ahead and just make sure you got windshield wiper fluid, right? These are just basic things you might do when you get in your car. But yet for some reason, we never do them for day-to-day life. Even if you're going to go to the beach for the day, well, you're going to grab a cooler, you're going to grab a chair, blanket, towel, sunblock. You got all these things that you're going to do that's just been ingrained into you since you were a kid. Well, these are all the things you take when you go to the beach, as an example.
If you're going to go off-roading, yeah, you need to deflate your tires a little bit. Here's how you do that. Here, watch the video.
Yeah. So, anything that you do should really have some level of preparedness to it. It's just a very basic kind of concept. And I really, really wish, I would love to be one of those free range people who just goes out into the world without a plan and they're just living in the moment. I love to have that mental freedom to be able to do that. But here's the thing. If you are a person who likes to plan and has to be organized and has to have those things in place, you can still live that way. You can still live a very free and relaxed and non-stressed out life because you took the time up front to get those things prepared, ready to, it's ready to go on a trip, ready to go for an emergency or whatever the case might be.
That's an enormously important concept. And when we talk about being prepared, I think one of the keys to being prepared is how do you keep a good, calm headspace? As long as you're calm, as long as you have a skill set to be able to bring yourself down out of panic mode and to be able to say, okay, whoa. That OODA loop starts kicking in and you say, okay, this is actually happening. So what can I do right now to help myself? And just to be able to have that mindset, I think is absolutely critical.
Yep, 100%. And, Chris just mentioned something, and this is what we're going to also try to do along the journey here. He mentioned the OODA loop, right? So it's observe, orient, decide, and act. Very common, acronym in law enforcement and other areas. But again, we're going to do the best we can as we go. And we're using a lot of this jargon and things that are, whether they're law enforcement or whether they are, tied to other types of skills or expertise. We'll do the best we can to kind of define those things along the way. But everything and, anything and everything is on the table. One of the things that was not even really on the radar for Chris and I is we were just talking about basic things like communications and emergency medical kits, power, batteries, what to carry, when and where, and what was considered to be kind of essential gear and must-have types of things. And then I started talking with a friend of mine. And like I mentioned earlier, I'm a general class ham radio operator. I was talking to another friend and he was like, well, I got these radios. I'm not really sure what to do with them. Well, it turns out we had three or four guys here in the neighborhood. All of them had radios because they were told that they needed to have them for emergency preparedness, but nobody really knew how to program them. Nobody knew how to get them set up and to get them to where they can talk to the repeaters and to be able to make them valuable tools in preparedness. So now we have a little neighborhood communications group, right? And we'll talk about, again, these are things we're going to cover as we go through, discussing how to build community preparedness teams and building your team and what that team should be comprised of and how to deal with some of the challenges and stressors associated with all of that. But everything, like I said, everything's on the table. And we're also going to try to get into gear reviews. And, as we just buy things for ourselves, we're going to say, hey, I picked up this new battery backup thing that is whatever. It's a solar powered generator. We're going to talk about it. If somebody sends us one, we're going to do an honest and transparent review on it. If it's junk, we're going to tell you that it's junk.
Also, on that note, I just found out that some of those little power banks that you use to charge up your cell phone, I always used for an emergency. This is how you charge up your hearing aids. I just found out that they need to have an always-on feature or a trickle charge because if you're charging up your hearing aids, and a lot of the hearing aids today are rechargeable, the power bank doesn't know that something is attached to it because it's drawing so little power. And so if you do have a power bank that has the always-on or the trickle charge to it, you can leave your hearing aids connected and charged up, and the power bank will not shut off. So when you wake up in the morning, your hearing aids will be charged.
Good to know. Okay. Well, and I have so I have a wireless mic that I use when I'm doing YouTube videos or for any other kind of recording. And this wireless mic is the exact opposite. This thing will always try to constantly be pulling energy and charging. And so if I unplug it from a charger, they're constantly draining, it drives me absolutely insane. But that's kind of a separate subject there. But one of the biggest things that I think, and I feel like Chris agrees with me on this one, is if you've ever seen shows on TV like Doomsday Preppers was on years ago, I really want to try to debunk a lot of the myths around what it is to be a prepper or to be prepared. We're not. I think that show was neat and it was fun and it was kind of cool. I think some of the folks,
lots of drama.
I think some of the
and
folks
who
on there
doesn't like drama?
Yeah, some of the folks on there were definitely way over the top. And a lot of times anyone who says that I'm a prepper or I'm involved in preparedness kind of gets viewed in that same light. What this channel and podcast is talking about is, we're not trying to get
everyday Americans.
Yeah, we're not trying to get you to hey, you need to have 100,000 rounds of ammo and enough food to feed a village, right? If you grow a small prepping community to that level, that's great. But we're targeting, families, small to mid-sized communities, individual preppers. Like there are a lot of people who their spouse, for whatever reason, whether it's guy or gal, I've seen it both ways. One of them is all about preparedness and the other one could not care less. And that introduces a lot of challenges. And we're also going to talk about that probably in a dedicated episode. But don't try to go at this alone. I can't stress to you enough the importance of community and building your team. And it might only be your next door neighbor. It might just be your kids. It might be a small group of 4 or 5 of you on the cul-de-sac. But it's incredibly important to build your team.
I think that's a really important point also. And that was one of the things that really, really surprised me, because when I started on this road to just try to stay prepared, one of the concepts that was totally revolutionary to me was you don't have to do it all. You don't have to be an expert in everything. One of the most significant factors in you being prepared is to be able to team up with others. So if you get a small group of people, like-minded, everybody's going to have some different skill sets, and you can tap into those different skill sets, and that's where the real preparedness and the importance, I don't know, it's the best case scenario.
No, that's huge. Absolutely. And, I think that it's also important to remember that this is something that it's for anyone. It is not something that is unique to, middle-aged white guys or whatever. Whether you're single, married, suburban, urban, rural, everybody's going to have different things they need to do as part of that, that preparedness journey. But, figuring out what your team looks like and being able to, that's another thing too, another component or element of things. You don't necessarily have to love everybody in your team, right? You just got to at least have enough mutual respect for each other to work together to solve a problem. So like Chris had mentioned a second ago, you don't have to be a ham radio expert. You might be an expert in something else. But if you have somebody on your team who can help you get your stuff programmed, show you how to use it, and they may not be a part of your long-term strategy. You might just be leveraging each other's resources to help get past a hump or a technological barrier of some sort. And then you say thank you and you move about your way or go about your day. So folks, we had to put a lot of time, energy, and effort into pulling back the reins today, because I can probably see that Chris and I are a little excited about what we're talking about. And it's really, really easy to get off on tangents when you're talking about preparedness. I found myself doing that a couple times today already. But hey, if you want to catch up with Chris and I, or you have something you want to share, you want to suggest a show topic, or just to reach out to say, hey, look, this is something I've seen in my journey and I want to share it with you guys, hit us up at info@preparedneighborspodcast.com. And as always, don't be scared.
Be prepared.
We'll see you next time.